Cyber Security Uncles. I'm Uncle Steve.
And I'm Uncle Rich. Good afternoon to you all.
So we've got a couple of questions that came through, which we'll hope to go over this time. So, Rich, do you want to take us into the first one?
Yeah, sure. So the first one reads as follows. Dear Agony Uncles, I have recently started working in cybersecurity. And while I love the challenge and the constant learning, I can't help but feel overwhelmed by the pressure to keep up with rapidly advancing technology. It seems like every day there's a new vulnerability or attack vector to worry about. How do I maintain a healthy work life balance and prevent burnout in an industry where the stakes are so high and the pace is relentless? Sincerely, struggling to stay secure.
That's that is a question that comes up quite regularly, isn't it? It's something, especially if you're new in the industry, it can look a bit overwhelming. I think the truth of the matter is you've joined an industry where people just don't sleep.
Yeah, absolutely. Where coffee is your friend.
Absolutely, yeah. Just um, eat it by the spoonful straight out of the Nescaf jar. No, but I think the truth is that actually, while there is an enormous amount of stuff out there, the stuff that you need to worry about at any particular time is often more limited. Um, Focusing in on the things that matter to your business is a good approach. So, yeah, you're right in that at any one time there are literally thousands of potential vulnerabilities out there. Um, there are there are changes in technology that are coming left, right, and center, but your organization won't be affected by all of those all of the time. So getting a good grip on what it is that how, how technology is used in your organization and what technologies are out there that you need to keep on top of is a good starting point. And then also understanding, I think, who your potential threat actors are, and then learning a little around what are their known TTPs. So, are you in an industry where hacktivism is going to be the most likely source of threats, or are you, in critical national infrastructure where actually nation state disruptive APTs may be the people who are most interested in you? So actually understanding about who it is that might be looking to compromise or to disrupt your business, and then what could they do? What's the intersection between who they are, their TTPs, and your environments is a good way to keep on top of that. And that narrows down the fields quite significantly, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And yes, granted, the threat actors and all the bots out there and all of that stuff, they don't sleep. They're often 24 hours a day, but it doesn't mean you can't sleep. You need to be able to trust in the technologies and the people and processes that you've put in place to be able to handle things whilst you get some well-deserved rest. Um, it's I think it's fair to say that when the cybersecurity industry was in its early days, it was merged heavily with IT. It was people thought it was an offshoot of IT, and rather than its own separate and distinct discipline. And IT people go home and get some rest. They just rely on their firewalls. They rely on antivirus software. They lean on those things. They don't worry about security 24 hours a day, and nor should you. It's absolutely be cognizant of what's going on out of hours in other time zones, things
Yeah.
like that. Absolutely, but you are one person doing one job. If you need additional resource, if you're worried about things happening at night or at the weekends, then um, either hire somebody or outsource to an MSSP
Mm.
in order to get those hours covered. There has to be realistic expectations on what you can achieve. And
Yeah.
if you're being cruel to yourself by working punishing amounts of hours or frantically stressing out over every single potential threat, then you're not doing yourself any favors and you won't be most effective in your role anyway.
No, I'd agree with that. I think perhaps there's it's possible that in the background to this question, in this particular organisation, there is a lot of responsibility being placed on people who are perhaps quite early in their careers, and maybe they don't have the resourcing or possibly the processes, people and processes in place to be able to confidently keep on top of the security posture for the organization. Now, if you're junior and new in an organization, it's very difficult to influence those things. But where you can spot how things could be done better, at least bringing those up to the attention of via your line management or chain of command, so that improvements can be put in place would be good. Good security visibility is also another really good way to start with this. So if you're just looking at things as it's all technical control, you can put all those technical controls in place and then cross your fingers and hope that nothing goes wrong. Actually being able to get information around what is happening at any one time can give you a little bit of comfort that most of the time, most of the attacks that are thrown at you are not targeted, they're not specific, and they won't succeed. So there is a vast amount going on, but actually a lot of it is worth being aware of, but you don't need to lose sleep over.
Now, Stephen and I did, along with some other colleagues, in fact, did some nice little webinars before Christmas around cybersecurity strategy and things like that. And I think this question leans into some of that to a certain degree, in that having a good cybersecurity strategy in place gives you something to lean against and something to work with. But also, one of the key points that we mentioned in cybersecurity for IT managers, which was another session we did just before Christmas, which highlighted the need to set a good security baseline in your organization.
Yeah.
And having a good level of security just as a baseline in your organization can give you a certain level of comfort and a certain sense of security, because it also allows you to know where your gaps are and what you need to do next, but also any potential pinholes in firewalls and things like that.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to approach it. You can't make an organization secure overnight. You can't keep on top of everything. It's about focusing down on the things that really matter. And yeah, a good cybersecurity strategy will at least mean that the risks are understood at the right level within the organization. There's a tendency certainly in perhaps slightly smaller organizations, small to medium-sized organizations, that the entire responsibility for remaining secure gets delegated quite low into the organization, and there's nobody senior that really feels like they own it. There's what do they say about risks, that you bring things up in your risk committee, and somebody senior says, I accept that risk, by which they mean I accept that you now have that risk. So you've got to be making sure that the discussions are being had, the information, like that positioning of cyber risk and lining that up against business risk is being done properly, that it's being owned in the right place. And again, that manages down the amount of stuff that on a day-to-day basis you have to worry about. Something else that actually just struck me, if you're worried about the late breaking or the rapidly breaking stuff, what is it that's happened overnight since I was last in? It might be worth just tuning into some of the podcasts first thing in the morning. We do one, don't we? So we do this daily cyber briefing, where we try to look at things that are happening at the moment that are worth paying attention to. We're not the only people that do that. There are various other podcasts out there. So I listen to various. I do one myself. So for us, so that's a good way to find out, has something happened that means I'm going to have to change my approach for the day. So is there a new vulnerability that's been discovered in something that is core to what we're doing? Has something kicked off in some part of the world where I now need to go and pay attention to the potential for that to affect our business, that sort of stuff. That's quite a good way to keep on top of the rapid churn stuff in the new vulnerabilities, new attack methods, particularly active threat groups, that sort of thing.
Perfect. I don't think I've got anything to add for this question.
No, I just I would say it does get better. You know, you do
It does.
you do find that ways in which you can keep on top of stuff. Maybe just carve out a little bit of the day for just doing some threat research around what's out there, what's going on. But make sure it's focused on what matters to your business, and that does narrow it down enough to make it manageable.
Perfect. And one last thing I would add is that the cybersecurity community, wherever you can find it, whether that's Reddit, Discord, Stack Overflow, wherever, or especially LinkedIn, it's a great community, quite small, with a few well-known characters within it, but everybody supports each other. And that's fairly unique in my experience. And so I would absolutely lean into those relationships you have with other security contacts in your networks on places like LinkedIn. And don't be afraid to ask questions. And quite often you'll find that people are more than willing to help.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
So, second question of the day says, Dear Agony Uncles, I find myself in a senior leadership position in the cybersecurity realm, but lately the weight of responsibility feels crushing. The constant pressure to protect sensitive data, mitigate risks, and stay ahead of evolving threats is taking its toll on my mental well-being. How can I manage this overwhelming sense of responsibility without sacrificing my own sanity or effectiveness as a leader? Warm regards, burdened by cybersecurity leadership.
Ooh, there's an awful lot in that one to unpick, isn't there?
Oh, there really is. And there's a lot of questions that I would really want to know about age and previous career and how they got to this point. But I, I think it's tricky. Any senior leadership role comes with responsibility.
Yeah.
The clue's very often in a job title, but you would hope that somebody has taken the relevant steps to get to that point. Yes, some people take huge shortcuts, they job hop, push for senior job titles before their time, and end up in a right old mess. But you would hope that most people would walk the path and get there with all the skills and experience in their toolkit that enable them to cope with this new level of responsibility and pressure.
Yeah, I think that's very true. It is, in the end, it is down to you to manage your career, right? So if you are moving up into a senior management positions with more responsibility, especially picking up responsibility for security of the organization, having got there via a path that gives you some resilience and some effectively some tools in the toolkit you can use to deal with these things is a very good starting point. I think also something in this around understanding where responsibility and accountability lie within an organization. I've seen senior sounding roles be given a whole load of accountability for things without having the ability to influence what's going wrong.
Yeah, and there's two points there actually. Having the ability, as in skills, experience, knowledge, but also having the authority.
Yeah, exactly. If you
and
have
that
the
can be difficult.
if you've got the authority to make the changes that will address the risks, because it is down to risk, right? If you've got a load of responsibility, we've got responsibility because you're addressing risk one way or another. Then vast amounts, in fact, pretty much all that we really do in security is address or manage risk. If the weight of responsibility is too high, that's probably because the risks are not being managed properly. So it is very difficult if you know that your neck's on the block, as it were, for securing things, but you're not given the authority to deal with those things that you understand are the risks. Or equally, it could well be that you're looking at things that are a cyber risk, but haven't aligned those to business risk properly. So the things that are perhaps keeping you up at night are not specifically relevant to your organization. So it lifts the kind of the whole piece needs to get lifted up to the right level. In the end, ultimate responsibility lies with board members, CEO, those sorts of people. They, if they're good at their job, will be delegating at the right level the things that need to be done. So it is very difficult, though. I think trying to maintain a reasonable work-life balance is quite important too, and building up a management team of your own that you can rely on is a very good way to begin to address some of these things.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you were this mythical blank slate of a human being who suddenly found yourself parachuted into a senior management role, the sorts of things you need to know are mostly soft skills, really. You might not be hands-on with any tools anymore.
Yeah,
You're going to need to know and understand people, how people in your team best work, where their skills lie, and how they're most effective in terms of delivering on the work they have to do. So, I mean, I once had a very good developer who had Asperger's, and he struggled with all social interactions, so couldn't communicate to the people requesting work from him when he was snowed under or when he was going to be late or had issues with delivery. Consequently, it got to the point where he was snowed under, couldn't cope, and had a small breakdown.
mm.
And I had to unpick everything that he did and basically reorder his work, speak to everybody who wanted work from him on his behalf. I then made a change where everybody would feed work through me and I'd pass
Yeah,
it on to him in a sequential fashion. He was basically receiving work in a parallel fashion and it was
yeah,
too much to
yeah,
handle.
yeah,
So I switched how we did it, fed him work sequentially, and he managed to actually turn his entire working life around, was more productive, less error prone,
mm.
ultimately happier in his work, just from a simple change in how we manage him and his workload. And that's very much a soft skill. That's not, identifying issues and taking steps to resolving
Yeah,
them in such a way is a people thing. You won't get it on something like a course from Udemy or whatever.
no,
That's the sort of thing that managers have to learn. And equally, you need to know a bit of HR as well. Understand what's good, what's bad, what you can do, what you can't do with regard to people from an HR front. It's very important. You want to make sure that people are happy, but equally, as a senior manager, you are balancing that tightrope between keeping your staff happy, but achieving what the business wants.
yeah.
And sometimes those two things can be at odds with each other.
Yeah, yeah, no,
So
that's very true. I think the whole chain of command thing is really important, actually. And if you're a senior leader, it is important to make sure that that is properly understood within your own area, and that colleagues, peers in the organisation also understand that work needs to come. Somebody used to say to me, work needs to come in through the front door and not down the chimney and in through the windows at the same time. One of the things that goes wrong if you do get that, if that doesn't work well, is it's very difficult to know whether people are actually working on the business priorities, as in our case, mitigating the right business risks at any particular time. Because something is urgent, it doesn't mean to say it's actually important. So that's good. That also leads on to, well, this particular person, if they're in a senior leadership position, I'm going to make the assumption that they've got people, they've got a department or a team or teams of people that are supposed to be dealing with certain things. So making sure that at that strategic level, as a senior leader, you understand what it is that needs to be done, and that you've put in place the things in your department that will deliver to those requirements and deal with those risks. It should take the pressure off, at least on a day-to-day basis. It shouldn't be overwhelming day to day.
Yeah, leading is very much not the same as doing when it
Agreed.
comes to a lot of security operations. And that's something to bear in mind. A lot of leaders stay hands-on far longer than they should because they love being on the tools. I did the same, years ago in a past career. I was network and server engineering, and even though I had people on my team, it was very hard to let go of those network cables and to let people start actually taking over those jobs
Yeah.
that I would have previously done. But you have to, because if you don't let go of the tools, you can't progress on to the next thing. The more senior element of your role doesn't come into play until you do let go of the tools and start working on policy, procedure, process,
Yeah.
risk mitigation, and things like that.
Yeah, and the politics of making sure that the right things are being done. That from a business perspective, the other senior leaders understand that when you're asking to do something, or when you're putting together your strategy and your plans, that's because you're supporting what they're trying to do, not you're busily just doing random stuff that they don't understand. So it does become more political the further up in the organization that you get.
Oh, we have a very good comment from CTG Intelligence there. But if you do let go of the tools, is that when your relevance countdown clock starts ticking?
Oh no, I completely
No,
disagree with that.
no.
No, totally.
Your relevance to the business goes up as your technical prowess potentially drops off. But I would say your relevance changes.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I very much agree with that. I mean, the point is you've got to where you are because you've got the skills to be able to direct a considerable amount of stuff that needs to be done by experts. I've always been of the opinion that if I'm in a privileged position to be employing people to do things, I want them to be better at that stuff than me. If they're not at least as good as me, if not better, then they're not the right people for it, to be honest. So, and then you've got to give those people if they've got responsibilities to get things done, you've got to give them the authority. And you sometimes do have to be a buffer between what your people are doing and what may be otherwise thrown in their direction.
Absolutely. Yeah, it things do change as you become senior. It's a fact of life. It's not just an age thing, although age often comes with it, as you can tell by the colour of my beard. But I would say that although the challenges change, if you can keep hold of that curiosity
Yeah,
that you had as a far younger person in your career, keeping that level of curiosity, being unafraid to challenge a status quo, are always good things to keep with you. But if you are in a senior position and you can hand off certain levels of responsibility, do so absolutely. Remember to
yeah.
delegate, and trust that your team, who you potentially hired, are the professionals that you'd hope them to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, bearing in mind that the tools are a means to deliver something. The tools aren't knowing which button to click or which menu to find something under. That isn't the core of the value. The core of the value of having the tool is in what way does that tool make this business more secure. So understanding at a higher level what needs to be done in order to be secure is adding much more value than being the person that can sit in front of in front of the tool itself and actually use it. So could I sit in front of a Cisco router and configure it still? Well, probably. I wouldn't be as good though as people who were been doing that more recently than me. Could I understand how to secure an otherwise unsecure network? Well, yeah. I understand the architectures, I understand where the particular technical controls would need to be. I may not be the best person to actually implement those because I've been away from the keyboard for too long. But you need to understand. So it isn't completely to be. I think you need to avoid becoming a general manager.
Yeah.
Because it isn't just about dealing with HR and people. Is that there is you are there trying to identify the alignment between tech risk, cyber risk, and business risk, put together the right strategy to deal with that, which involves understanding where you are now as an organization, what your maturity levels are, where you need to get to, dealing with actually writing the strategy for that, getting a roadmap together, dealing with budgeting for it, making the case at a senior level to get all this stuff funded and actually executed. So none of that requires you to be good at the tools. And to be completely honest, people who are really good at the tools are probably not good yet at that sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And just because you're no longer on the tools doesn't mean you have less visibility per se. If you make sure your reporting lines are in place, and that can be as informal as a simple daily stand up.
Mm.
You can still keep an eye on what's going on and make sure that anything that's important gets floated up to the top to you.
Yeah,
That's not a problem
exactly.
at all.
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree with you. But I think CTG Intelligence's comments are points are well made in this, but equally, um, there is a point at which you're not moving away from the tools and then becoming just anybody in an organization. You're moving away from the tools because you understand this stuff, and actually you've got broader skills that you can bring to bear within the organization.
Yeah, I wish I still had time to be on the tools, but I really don't.
Eliza keeps telling me that I need to stop jumping on calls with Ross and the engineering team, and yes, it is, because it is very tempting to go back to this. It's really interesting, though, isn't it?
Yeah, I must admit I did have a lot of fun in those days.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
now
me too.
now I'm pulling levers for a living, and that's also fun.
Yeah, that is quite true. It's about because you have the ability to see things actually get done. To make if you can bring ideas up from the people in your team or your department, and you actually see those things get implemented, you've facilitated that. That in itself has got a strong sense of satisfaction associated with it.
Absolutely. I mean, right now I'm getting a huge sense of satisfaction from work that other people have done with the launch of our new security tool.
Yes, exactly. Yes, Draco was launched, wasn't it? Yesterday.
Yeah,
Yesterday.
exactly. And for those of you listening who haven't seen it yet, that is on dracoi.com. You can find it all over our respective LinkedIns. And that's probably worth checking out. Not that this is an advert, but it is an example of something that was an idea. But I have essentially handed 99% of the work off to the development team. And they've done sterling work and kept me abreast of the situation. But again, I've not been on the tools, but I've felt very, very close to the project.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, completely. Yeah, yeah. So that was yeah. It's useful if you are in a SOC kind of role. Check it out. You might like it. Hope it's useful for you. I can't think of much else I can say to help this particular person. Really, I think we've covered an awful lot. For this second question, it is tough. If in the end you're given a load of responsibility, but you're not given the authority to actually deal with these things, it may well be that this is cultural within your organization, and if you can't change the culture, you may consider taking the skills elsewhere.
And on that bombshell,
Thank you all for listening or watching. And we will be back next month. And if you have any questions that you'd like us to answer, please do send them in. We're always, keen to know what people are thinking, what people are struggling with. Hopefully, what we say is helpful, and if not, you can just ignore it.
And as ever, thank you for your comments whilst we've been streaming. It's good to hear from you. Thanks so
Yes,
much.
great.
See you next
Thanks a
time.
lot. See you next time. Bye bye.